It's Headline Insights with Wally Wood and Brent Fricker. Of course, Wally Wood is the first news creator, news agency creator for NASA. But since the 70s, he's been doing accurate biblical prophecy in the news. He was dubbed God's newsman by none other than Hilton Sutton and Dave Wilkerson and J.R. Church. You remember J.R. Church? I sure do. Yes. But hello there.
Hello there, Mr. Brent.
Commander Wally, or should I say General Wally Wood, right there in the great land of Texas.
Now, don't go over pumping this. People have trouble with the fact that I've got 5 websites and it's not ego driven.
Well, no, it's not ego driven. You know, you are like other incredible men that I know that, my goodness, if you were ego driven, there are people who do not have an ounce of the credibility you have.
Well, praise the Lord. Thank you,
that
sir.
Are charlatans out there, or maybe not charlatans, but they've based an entire ministry on one concept or one experience when you have had a multitude of those. And of course, I mean, goodness, 5 websites, you know, I would never complain about someone having 5 websites. Of course, being a marketer,
right?
You know, you want as many portals and platforms out there as possible. You know, because
how many shows do you have?
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
okay, at least 7, right?
Yeah, that's your point.
Sure didn't plan on that, but you know what? Though the commonality though is me. You know, I mean, I wear many different hats, but I'm just one thing. I'm an encourager, encouraging you folks, to access the truth and to live by the truth. I do. You know, when I was a counterterrorism correspondent, people even my family didn't know all that I was doing.
Yeah.
But you know, and that was partial by design, but I drew my line in the sand in 2012 on 19 satellites when I called out the Obama Muslim Brotherhood regime that no one's surprised of now. But all that, some are still ignorant of that fact or willfully ignorant of that fact. God bless them. But here we are. You've seen a lot of things in your time, and you could still continue to see some fascinating things. But folks, we want to give you five connection points for Wally Wood. You know, that's not a negative to me. You know, some people are looking for more of a ministry touch.
Right.
Some people are looking for a news platform interaction. Some are looking for more of a scholastic or more of an academic study. You know, you've got all that because it's just who you are. But let's go ahead and go through those today while we're talking about headline insights. Of course, there's always more headlines to talk about, but go ahead, take it away, Wally.
Well, I feel impressed right this moment to give a little bit of a explanation behind the David Wilkerson connection that you keep referring to. And most people have heard about David Wilkerson crossing the switchblade. And but how in the world did Wally and David connect? And I won't go into the whole story at this moment, but I will say that as far back as I think it was 1975, somewhere around through there, the Lord told me that he was going to get me with David Wilkerson. And I was on a plane coming back to Houston from Oklahoma City when I heard the Lord say that. And it threw me for a loop. You know, you just don't call David Wilkerson on the phone. Let's have lunch. And so I said, is there another opinion up there? You know, is there a second opinion up there? Where's this coming from? And sure enough, in less than 30 days after I heard that word on the plane, I received a letter handwritten by David Wilkerson addressed to me personally. And he said, "Dear Wally, the Lord woke me up this morning at 3 a.m. and your name was on my mind. Wow. You and I have never met. And I had to wait for my secretary to come into the office today to verify that you're even on our subscription roll for my newsletter to get your address. And the Lord has told me that I'm supposed to sit down with you on the 3rd night of my 3-night crusade in Houston in August at the Houston Music Theater. Please join me then. Sincerely, David Wilkerson." How's that for a cold, bold letter? And
Pretty exciting when Dave Wilkerson writes you a letter that
yes,
brought you to his mind, 3:00 in the morning.
and so I went to all 3 nights of the crusade, but the third night I went up on stage afterwards and introduced myself to him. He grabbed me by the arm. He said, "Come here, boy." He took me back to his dressing room, and we sat down at the makeup table. He says, "Would you mind telling me why it is I haven't gotten a lick of sleep since I wrote you that letter back in March? What in the world do you have to talk to me about?" And so I mentioned the topic, and he said, "Well, quite frankly, the Lord has been dealing with me on this topic. What's he told you?" And that opened a gateway. And from that point on, he always referred back to this young man in Houston that he met years before, who changed his whole perspective on this one particular topic that he credited me with. So that's how David Wilkerson came into the fold. And he told me, he said, "I see that your anointing is as God's newsman." Well, he didn't know about Hilton Sutton starting that trek, but that's how David and I got close. And it's been an exciting story ever since. But from this encouragement that was given to me by Hilton Sutton, David Wilkerson, and J.R. Church, excuse me, when the internet finally fully fell into my hands, I felt impressed that this was to be a major forum for this ministry of getting the word out in a news format about the end times, but in particular, the revelation behind this man who would be God, the Antichrist. Now, as I've told you before and your audience, when I was 8 years old, having heard my dad read from us for the first time out of the book of Revelation, I asked the Lord to teach me about the Antichrist and cause me to understand how the world would one day worship a man as a god.
Right.
That was 8 years old. 10 years later, a news article appeared in the Houston Chronicle having to do with the changeover from the old military service numbers to Social Security numbers. And my dad presented to us that article, and I have it to this day, that ancient article back in 1968. And the Lord told my dad told me, he said, "This is the beginning of the changeover into the number system of the Antichrist." And that's when I told the Lord, I said, "I want to dedicate the rest of my life to the research, writing, reporting of the signs of your return in my lifetime." So that's where this all started.
Wow.
So the first website that the Lord encouraged me to build was wallywoodministries.com. And this is a general overview of what this ministry is about, the depths of its outreach. And it's a springboard into the other websites, which were born later, but they fulfill a particular chapter in this end time prophetic review.
Wow.
I'm so sorry about my voice here. It just started going out on me.
That's right. I'm going to these websites as we talk about them as well.
Okay.
And I'm here right now, folks. WallywoodMinistries.com.
When you go to WallywoodMinistries.com, go to the page that's labeled Wood News Group.
Okay.
And it gives our online network for all of our connections, both in social media and in those websites. And you'll find the 4 of the 5, because you're on one of them, listed there, and they're all linked. The revelationfile.com, Genomicscentral.com, our transparentworld.com, and Technology in the News, which I've given the name of WallywoodTechNews.com. Okay. Now, each of these fill out a chapter in the administration of the Antichrist. Now, why do I have this phobia about the Antichrist? Because he's been prophesied to be the last world leader in the last generation before Jesus comes back. As you've heard me say before, when Antichrist shows up, he's pre-Christ. He's it. And all the indicators that we have today strongly suggest that the Antichrist is alive. And where for years I said he was in the wings, now I say he's in the green room.
Right.
And within the next 5 years, we're going to know who that man is.
Right.
So the revelation file itself is a general prophetic look into the course of world events and world headlines, all pertinent to the events and elements of the last days that Jesus talked about and that the prophets around him talked about. And so I take you into the depth of world news from a prophetic perspective on therevelationfile.com. Diginomicscentral.com is interesting because my very first book was called Cashless Society, A World Without Money, written in 1972.
72. You've seen it coming this long.
So we're looking at 50 years that book came out. And in there, I talked about how there would one day come a central computer that would oversee all of your financial transactions, from the Coke machine to the gas pump to the checkout counter. It would approve or disapprove your finances, your expenditures. Now, up until that point, you see, we were all free with our money. But in this particular instance, with this central computer, it's going to approve or disapprove your transactions based on your pay. And the line being that if you ain't got it now, you don't get it now. All right. So 1972, the internet didn't exist. We didn't know anything about the internet. So I called it CENTCOM for central computer. 19 years later, internet went live online, and it became what CENTCOM was predicted to be.
Ever since Al Gore invented it, right?
Yeah.
That's a joke, folks.
Well, there's some other stories around that too. But in 1998, I was asked to write a sequel to that book. And my response was, why write a book that's going to be out of date before it reaches the end of the press run? So as I began to pray about it and realized that we were headed into not just a cashless society, but into a total digital economic system, suddenly the name Diginomics popped in my head. And as I checked through all the English-speaking dictionaries around, Diginomics didn't exist. So I submitted it to all the English-speaking dictionaries. And in 2007, Merriam-Webster Dictionary picked it up, posted it online, and gave me credit for coming up with a new word in the English language. So if you were to Google the word Diginomics, you'll find it's got global tracking everywhere. Well, in that course, a number of people have claimed to be originators of that word. And
they weren't.
Meanwhile, the grandfather of it all is sitting out here saying, Lord, what do we do about this? And that's when I felt impressed to come up with a central website called Diginomicscentral.com and let everybody see for themselves that it didn't start with people over there or whatever. There was a couple of guys in Utah that even went so far as to seek a patent and a trademark for the word Diginomics, and they got it. But then their attorneys began to do some due diligence and discovered you guys didn't come up with this guy did. So they removed the patent that those guys had put in for. So some very interesting history here.
I'm thankful they didn't sabotage a flight of yours to get your patents. Like not too distant, not too far from now. When
we have
a lot of patent holders were mysteriously vanished in an airplane. So,
well, it's been fascinating to watch the evolution of this word globally. There are now courses being taught at college level in universities across Europe on Diginomics. Seoul, South Korea, a number of years ago, the mayor of Seoul decided to upgrade his entire society, and he used Diginomics as the model for that upgrade. And in their first press release, they used the word Diginomics at least 6 times in their initial press release. So I'm very, very excited and pleased that the Lord has used this grocery clerk to start a trend. And so that's what you're going to find all this information on at diginomicscentral.com. Moving on from there, we have our transparent world. Now, what's that having to do with? Well, the Antichrist is going to present himself to be God, and he's going to sell himself to be God. Well, to pull that off in a highly sophisticated society, he's got to have access to every human being on earth like a God would have. And you're talking about over 7.5 billion souls. So how is he going to know? In fact, the Bible even tells us that he would have the power to kill anyone who does not worship him. Now, how's he going to know who's worshiping him and who's not? Unless they've all gone online.
This is going to shock some people, folks, what you're about to hear.
Yeah. And everybody on earth will be online in one form, fashion, or another. We are already there. It's now a matter of just closing the loop of the have-nots and get them online. And it's on this particular website, I take you into the technology that will make it possible for every human being on earth to be tracked and surveyed and monitored in real time. And like you said, Brad, this is going to shock people because the average thinker doesn't believe that we've come to those depths. That's why I call it our transparent world. We are the most transparent generation in the history of man. And you see, there's even work being done to add holography to our cell phones. With holographic projections, an individual, in fact, they've already tested this with the late Steve Jobs, he can pop up on your phone at any given moment as a 3D animated real live person, not a cartoon, but a real live person on your phone and address you by name and tell everything that you need to know about yourself if you should question him about this. There have been so many avenues I've been down in seeing the evolution of total transparency that it just blows my mind. When Houston, when we installed our smart street technology back in the 70s, I began to write articles about that technology because this was transparent technology to me. And Texas was the first state in the union to put easy tag technology in their driver's licenses as far back as the 70s and 80s.
Right.
And nobody knew it. Now every state's got it, but Texas was the first to do so. There wasn't a street you couldn't go down or a freeway you couldn't go down in the state of Texas and not be tracked by way of your driver's license.
Wow.
Now, when they opened the Transar Transit Center here in Houston back in the late 70s, I was the only reporter invited by the State Highway Department to join them as a guest at the new mission control for Houston's Transit Authority. And so we went to the second floor where they had all their computers set up and the big monitor on in front of them. And there were about 5 representatives of the Texas Department of Public Safety there as my hosts. And they wanted to demonstrate this new traffic system that we've all been a part of now and seen, and how they were able to track the speed of traffic on any given freeway. It was very impressive and with that technology. And at one point in their conversation, I saw a strip of red appear in the North Freeway of Houston. And I asked about it. I said, what's this red showing up here in this sea of green? What's this red telling me? And they said, well, it's telling us that a driver is going over the speed limit in that particular area. I said, okay, what do we know about this? So they got on their little keyboard and started keying some things in. and they said, and up on the screen came the name of the driver,
Wow.
the make and model of the car, how fast he was going, and how long he had been on the freeway.
What year was this?
This was in, I want to say it was like in 1982. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere in that general area.
Early 80s. They could tell
Yeah.
who you were, how
Yes.
fast you were going,
Oh,
all
listen.
that information.
Oh, I asked them for more. I said, what do we know about this guy? So they went on their keyboard and typed in a few other things, and I popped this dossier on the big screen in their mission control. His name, his address, his phone number, where he worked, the name of his wife, kids, where his wife worked, where the kids went to school, a full dossier on this man's family. And I said, wow, what are you going to do with this? And that's when they took their hand off the keyboard and they said, well, we're not going to do anything about it right now, but we could call him. I said, oh, that'll make his day. Charlie, this is Transar calling. We're tracking you at 75 in a 65 zone. Get your speed down or we'll send you a ticket in the mail. And they kind of chuckled and they said, yeah, you got that one nailed right. I said, so what's your future plan here? When do we go from freeways to tollways? And they said, oh, you have been doing your homework. I said, well, I know where smart street technology was birthed in Europe and Sweden. And they said, once we get all the freeways in America on the system, then you'll receive a bill in the mail like you would your phone bill every month. It'll tell you exactly how much you use the freeway for and the dates and everything like this, and then you'll be taxed accordingly. So that's the ultimate goal.
Wow.
But this is all part of the transparent world. And as I've shared this publicly over the years, I've had a few smart alecks in the audience say, well, I'll fool them. I'll just put some foil around my driver's license. They won't be able to follow me. I said, well, that'll send up a red flag. How's that? I said, well, every car made since 1987 has got a computer in it. And your freeways and your streets now have sensors at every intersection. So when you pull up to an intersection, it logs your car's presence by way of the computer on board as to where you are. So if you're on the freeway and you got your driver's license wrapped in foil, you've just told them that they have a driverless car on the freeway. And that's going to get their attention real fast.
So since the early 80s, since before they could call you on your cell phone, although they did have car phones then.
Right.
I mean, it's been said that any technology you've seen in the movies we have.
Yes.
It's also been said that any technology you have has been around for at least 50 years, Yeah.
In one form, fashion, or another.
And, here we are. People thought it was a conspiracy about Biden bucks, digital currency. You know what? That puppet, Obama's moving forward. He's the one in charge, folks. And then, of course, with the social credit system, not like China used.
China, right.
All
those models.
Yeah. And of course, no one's talked about all the 5G towers, billions of them put up while you were inside during the pandemic. That was also part of the plan too. That's how they track you. So,
and research is now being done into the health impact that these 5G towers are having. And I've been having some symptoms myself here of late, and working in the public as I do, I hear from people all the time talking about certain symptoms that they're experiencing that I'm experiencing. Uh-huh. And now these researchers are saying these are signs that the 5G towers are on, and they are having a major health impact on people everywhere.
Well, the scary thing is all you have to do is turn those up. You can cook everybody.
Yeah.
People don't understand this. Oh, it's a conspiracy. No, you're just a sheep.
Right.
Folks, and some of us have been very vocal about it this entire time, like myself.
Yeah.
And like you, Wally, when I would drive in the desert, I would get a phone call, and I couldn't do phone calls in the desert because the waves were coming through my head to my phone and give me headaches.
Yes.
During the first pandemic, when we were inside, I knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I started having those same symptoms too, different times of the day where you could tell it was turned up.
Yes.
But what most people don't understand is that if you turn those 5G towers up to a certain frequency, you can kill everybody. They don't
Yeah.
understand that.
Right.
And the places like Belgium, where hundreds of thousands of protesters were not covered by the mainstream media, funded by your enemies, our enemies. They knew these danger implications, but the average sheeple wants to call it a conspiracy theory.
And see, here's the rub of it all, brother. And I'm going to take this back to the mainstream of our conversation. It's Bible, it's Bible prophecy. Daniel chapter 2 was the first to begin to address the fact that there would come a one world empire at the end of time and would have one ruler oversee it all. And as you go through Bible prophecy and you begin to collect the dots and then connect them, it tells you the story of this man God who's going to prove himself to be God through advanced technology. And this is where my focus has been since the 60s. All right. And I prefer to do it from a news journalist perspective rather than a preacher's perspective, because prejudices exist. I don't want to come across as a preacher. I want you to listen to me as a professional journalist who has been writing about these things from a secular perspective for as long as he's been in the industry. And if you have ears to hear and eyes to see, and if you are hungering and thirsting to know the truth, then you'll better understand the basis behind my news reporting. It's all biblically based. Mm-hmm. And it's intended to bring the ancient prophecies alive in the context of modern headlines. So our transparent world takes you into these depths without even mentioning the Bible. It's intended to open the eyes of people who have never seen the depths of these things before. And we could spend another few programs just on this one topic alone, and it'll blow your mind. But finally, technology in the news, WallywoodTechNews.com. Now, this is where I predominantly present videos that you can get on YouTube. Most of them are on YouTube, of advancing technology that leads us into the direction of what we've been talking about here. You know, we buy into these toys for the excitement and the convenience that they offer. And while we are compromising ourselves for convenience, we're giving ourselves away to a bigger system that's hungry for data. And that's what this is all about. The Antichrist is going to rule the world as one man from one location. And if you go into Revelation 13 and read about him, read about the false prophet, how he'll have power to call fire down from heaven in the sight of the beast being the Antichrist. It mentions in that one chapter twice how the false prophet is able to do these great mighty things in the sight of the beast, suggesting that outside the sight of the beast, he does not have these powers. Therefore, his powers are technological, not supernatural. But the world is going to believe it to be supernatural because of the nature in which they will be performed. Okay. And then with that also comes artificial intelligence, because the Bible talks about this image of the beast in that language. Well, don't think image, think replica. Now, I don't know how much time we have left. You're watching the clock. I'm not.
Yeah, we've already completed our film time. It ended at a perfect place.
Oh, really?
But we're still doing fine.
Okay.
Because for the longest time, there's been a computer called the Beast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The very first
in Brussels, that 3-story computer in Brussels, and that was just a preliminary introduction that the Christian community grabbed a hold of. Okay, but do you remember? Are we still recording?
We are.
Okay. Do you remember Madeline Marie O'Hare,
Mm-hmm.
the atheist who
Oh yeah.
single-handedly got prayer out of the schools?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I talked to her one time, believe it or not, on the phone.
Wow.
In light of news that had just come out, this was back in the 70s, that she was going to sue the FCC to get Christian broadcasting off the air because it was using taxpayer dollars to do what it was doing. And the major media picked up on it. And so I was working for a major worldwide prophecy ministry at the time. And so they assigned me the task of reaching out to her to verify, because there were some, this was in the days before fact checkers. Okay. But there was some debate as to whether this was real or not. Even the FCC was saying this was not real. And yet the media was picking up on it as though it were. So we called her and I talked to her on the phone and asked her about this. And she chuckled. She says, "Isn't this a masterful piece of artwork?" I said, "Explain." She said, "Mr. Wood, there's no truth to this at all. I put this release out there to prove a point, how gullible you Christians are when it comes to verifying the facts." She said, "I can tell you that this is going to outlive me." And it has. Every about 5-6 years now on the internet, this new revelation goes forth of this lawsuit against the FCC to get Christian broadcasting. And
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen the repeated lie.
There's a storm of responses, people sending out petitions and all this other stuff. And the FCC has put on their front page of their website, this is not true, but nobody's paying attention to it. And it proves her point. You Christians are gullible. Once we put something out there that seems to have enough meat on it, you come like mad dogs to chew the meat. Well, having heard her say that deepened my commitment to check out things that go beyond mere conspiracy theory. I know about the conspiracies, but they're not conspiracy theories, they're conspiracy history.
Right.
Okay. Everything planned by the devil and his crew is conspiracy. Okay.
Well, the very name conspiracy theory came from those who killed Kennedy. I mean, they invented the word.
Yeah. So these are matters that we have to be, as I mentioned to you most recently, we have to be extra wise, extra diligent in the information we put out there because of our position as newscasters in this format that we have. We are harbingers of the truth. Don't go chasing after gossip and innuendos and hearsay. Prove the facts before you publish it as truth. So that's where I spend my time. And that's why I built these 5 websites, is to draw your attention to the phenomena of the times that we're in. And if you have an ear to hear and eyes to see, you'll be hungry enough to go deeper and you'll find the biblical connection but behind these facts. And that's the whole idea. Like the Apostle Paul said, "I've become all things unto all men, so that by my efforts I might be able to save some." And that's what drives this ministry, is that with the broadening forum that he's brought before us, that some might even be saved.
That's why you do it. That's why I'm doing it, folks. For you.
Back in the early 80s, when I was in radio, and I started the Christian News Network when I was working with Jimmy Swaggart. And it was initialized on his network of 6 stations across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a sponsor here in Houston, a local Bible bookstore. And I went to pay a visit to my sponsor one afternoon. As I walked into his bookstore, the first thing that hit me was that I'd never been in a bookstore like that before. where from floor to ceiling on all four walls, books. You had to use ladders on slides to get to the books in the upper shelves. I'm standing there in the doorway, Brent, looking at all these books. I said, Lord, do you want me to write? Why? Who's going to see it? And that's when I heard the Lord say, I'm building something new that will enable you to write to the world at little or no cost to you. And unbeknownst to me, he was predicting the internet 4 years before it went online. And look where we are now. We're producing this TV show with little out-of-pocket expense whatsoever by comparison to what you had to pay way back when you were on real live TV,
Right.
you know? And so the Lord has opened up these dynamic doors. He's given us a forum. He's given us an opportunity, a small window, because that too will fade away in the very near future as the Antichrist era gains momentum and definition. And we'll be forced to make a decision as to whether we want to become living, breathing targets, or will we do what Solomon said twice in the book of Proverbs, that the wise man sees the evil coming and he hides himself. So there's some more reckoning just down the line for us. And we're starting to see early vestiges of it in the censorship arena.
Oh, yeah.
Social media, you know?
Well, I'm shocked that I'm not being censored right now.
Yeah.
I've been censored for much less, folks. If you followed my page at all, last, decade.
Right.
But again, I guess I'm not a threat. So I sure am grateful for you, Wally.
All relative to how much of their attention you get by what you say. And it's all experimental at this point. They're just building that eventual network that will oversee our rights to speak and be heard.
Well, wait until people find out that if they've got they have their own IP address. How about that?
Yeah.
Oh, brother. Shock.
Oh, brother. Yeah.
And, so God bless you folks. Long live the purebloods as well. And
be careful what you say when you think your phone is off.
Oh yeah. It's never off.
It's never off.
A guy with a SWAT team in Tulsa told me it's never off. Even when the battery you think is dead, it's never off, folks.
Yes. And it can be turned on and turned off without you knowing it.
Exactly.
And again, this is not speculation. We've got all the evidence we need to prove that to you in a deeper program.
Well, deeper programs is what I'm looking forward to. And this has been incredible, Wally. Bless you, my man. Bless you, folks. Be ever ready. Be ever ready. Always be ready.
Stay tuned and keep looking up.
That's right. Never be taken by surprise. Don't retreat. Don't surrender. Don't give in. Stand your ground. Be a kingdom operative. Silence didn't help you. Consent didn't help you. Read that Bible of yours. Believe. Be bold. Be strong and courageous.